I keep trying to remind myself this is intending to be terrorizing. This is intending to scare me. So like, I'm like, okay, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Take a breath. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the name Kristil Krug? She may have been Grimsrod when you knew her.
Yeah.
And do you know a Daniel Krug?
No.
No? How do you know Kristil?
She was an ex-girlfriend.
She's an ex-girlfriend? How long's the ex? Like how long ago?
1999.
Oh, so like a long while ago.
She was my very first girlfriend ever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When was the last time you talked to Kristil? Has it been a minute?
It's been a minute, yeah.
Like since you moved from Durango?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would have been what, back in 2014?
Yeah.
Have you had any contact with anybody in that area since? Anybody,
No.
or have they contacted you at any time?
No.
It is close. I'll open the garage door, particularly medical. Ma'am, I need you to stay out, please.
I need you to come over here for a minute, okay? So we can work. Cam.
She's okay.
Police, everybody inside, make yourself known. Clear here, coming out. You go one way, I got the other. Clear here. She's got a good head wound. I think it's from falling down. Guys, you see anything other than a fall type of wound? That's a stalking wound.
December 14th, 2023. Broomfield, Colorado, 8 o'clock in the morning. The neighborhood is quiet. The kind of quiet that belongs to a Tuesday morning in December. Frost on the windshields, school runs just wrapping up. The day barely started. A woman pulls her car into the garage of her suburban home and steps out. Nothing about this moment looks unusual. Nothing about it looks like the last moment of her life. But here is what you need to know about this woman before we go any further. She was not unprepared. She had cameras mounted at every angle of her home, a dash cam in her car, a loaded firearm she carried everywhere she went, and a detailed spreadsheet. Every threat, every message, every timestamp, documented with the precision of someone who refused to be a helpless victim. For months, she had been living inside a nightmare, and she had fought back against it with everything she had. At that same moment, across town, a man was walking into his office, clocking in, greeting his co-workers, pouring his morning coffee like it was any other day. That man was her husband, and he had left her body on the garage floor 20 minutes earlier. This is not a story about a woman who wasn't careful enough. This is a story about a system that wasn't fast enough, and a man who knew exactly how to exploit both. Kristil Grimsrud was born on November 24, 1980, in Boulder, Colorado. She was a Colorado girl through and through, the mountains, the open air, the quiet pride of a state that gets into your blood. She grew up in a blended family, close to her brother Lars, her parents, her step-siblings. By all accounts, it was a home full of love, and Kristil carried that warmth with her everywhere she went for the rest of her life. From the time she was young, two things defined her in equal measure: science and dance. Not one or the other, both fully, without compromise. She was the kind of kid who could spend her afternoon buried in a chemistry textbook and then walk into a dance studio and lose herself completely in the music. Those two sides of her were never in conflict. They were just Kristil. Her academic talent was undeniable. She earned a scholarship to the Colorado School of Mines. And if you don't know that institution, understand this. It is one of the most rigorous STEM universities in the country. You don't get in on potential. You get in on performance. Kristil got in on merit, and she thrived there. She went on to build a career as a biochemical engineer, precise, methodical, the kind of professional who understood complex systems and knew how to solve problems that others couldn't even fully articulate. Her colleagues saw someone who brought quiet leadership into every room, someone who didn't need to be the loudest voice to be the most important one. But that is only half of who she was. Outside of work, Kristil was warm in a way that caught people off guard. She was funny, genuinely funny, not performatively funny. She was free-spirited. She was the kind of person who could walk into a room full of strangers and somehow make everyone in it feel like they'd known her for years. Her family described her as fiercely smart, but what they seemed to mean was that her intelligence wasn't cold, it was alive. She brought the same intensity to loving people that she brought to everything else she did. In the mid-2000s, she met a man named Daniel Krug. They married in 2007 and settled in Broomfield, a quiet, comfortable suburb sitting between Denver and Boulder. Over the years that followed, they built what looked from the outside like a full life. 3 children, born in 2009, 2012, and 2015. A home, a routine, a family. Kristil loved those kids in a way that people who knew her said was her defining characteristic above everything else. Structured but warm, present, protective. They were her whole world, and everything she did was filtered through the question of what was best for them. But by 2023, something had changed behind the walls of that house in Broomfield. The marriage had been quietly deteriorating for some time. They were sleeping in separate rooms. Kristil had started looking into divorce, and more than that, she wanted full custody of their children. She had made her decision. She was ready to move forward. Daniel knew, and Daniel was not willing to let go. What happened next would look on the surface like a stalking case. It wasn't. Before we continue, this video contains details of domestic violence, psychological manipulation, and violent death. If any of these topics are difficult for you, please take care of yourself. Viewer discretion is advised. October 2nd, 2023. Kristil's phone buzzes with a message from a name she hadn't seen in over 20 years, Jack Anthony Holland. A man she had briefly dated as a teenager, ancient history, someone she hadn't thought about in decades. The message was casual, almost friendly, the kind of thing that reads as awkward but not alarming. Kristil ignored it and moved on with her day. But the next day, everything changed. The messages that followed were nothing like the first one. They turned cruel fast, then threatening, then something far more unsettling than threatening. They turned specific. He knew her license plates had expired. He knew she had been to the dentist. Details that had no business being in a stranger's message. Details that could only come from someone who had been watching her, not from a distance, close. Kristil felt it immediately. This wasn't someone reaching out from the past. Someone was tracking her movements in real time, and they wanted her to know it. What happened next says everything about who Kristil was. She didn't freeze. She didn't wait and hope it would stop. She responded the way she responded to every problem in her life, with precision and action. She had cameras installed at every angle of her home. A dash cam went into her car. She enrolled in firearm safety classes, obtained a concealed carry permit, and began carrying a loaded gun with her everywhere she went. Every single day. And then she did something that would later become one of the most important pieces of this entire story. She started a spreadsheet, a stalker log. Every message, every threat, every email, every timestamp, documented in meticulous detail. The engineer in her refused to be a passive victim. If something was coming for her, she was going to have a record of every step it took. By late October, she went to the police. She sat down with Detective Andrew Martinez, a seasoned investigator who had worked some of the most serious cases in Broomfield. She walked him through everything: the messages, the log, the private investigator she had hired to dig into Anthony's background. Martinez took it seriously. He sent warrants to Google and mobile providers requesting phone records, email logs, and account information, the digital evidence that should have been able to identify exactly who was behind those messages. The companies received those warrants, and then nothing happened. Weeks passed, no response, no data, no answers. While Kristil lived in escalating fear, the requests sat in a queue somewhere, being processed like any other piece of routine paperwork. The harassment didn't wait. A new message arrived. this time with a photo attached. It was Daniel, photographed outside his own workplace. The stalker was now sending proof that he could get to her husband too. The threat had expanded beyond Kristil. Now her entire family was inside it. She hired a private investigator to track down Anthony's addresses and digital history. She ran safety drills with her children so they would know what to do if someone showed up at the house. She did everything a person could reasonably do to protect themselves and the people they loved. Then, in early December, a message arrived that felt like breathing room for the first time in months. Anthony, it seemed, was backing off. His girlfriend didn't want him in contact anymore. He said he wouldn't be coming to Colorado. For the first time in weeks, the Krug household felt something close to relief. It was the calm before the storm, and Daniel had engineered every second of it. If this story is hitting you, stay with me. We're just getting to the part where everything unravels. If you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss the full picture. Now, let's get back to it. The morning of December 14th, 2023 started the way most mornings did in the Krug household. Kids to get ready, lunches to pack, the familiar rhythm of a family running on a schedule. Kristil got the children up, got them out the door, and drove them to school. Daniel left for work. From the outside, it looked like any other Tuesday morning in a quiet Colorado suburb. It was anything but. What no one saw, what no camera captured, was someone approaching the front door of the Krug home before Kristil returned, pressing a strip of blue masking tape over the Ring doorbell camera, and slipping inside the house to wait. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Kristil pulled her car into the garage and stepped out. She had her firearm on her. She had done everything right. She had no reason to believe the danger was already inside. She never made it through the door. Daniel was waiting for her. He came from behind. The only way this worked, because Kristil was not someone who would go down without a fight, and he knew it. He struck her in the head with a blunt object multiple times and then stabbed her in the heart. It was over quickly. It had been planned for months. What followed was the work of a man who had thought through every detail. At 8:15 in the morning, the home security system went offline. Every camera in the house was disabled, except for the one pointing outside the garage. That one stayed on. All of it was done from inside the house using Kristil's own phone. A deliberate choice, disabling the interior cameras while leaving the exterior one running, controlling exactly what could and couldn't be seen. At 8:22 a.m., Kristil's phone went completely dark. It would never be used again after that moment. 2 minutes later, at 8:24 a.m., neighborhood surveillance footage captured something investigators would later find deeply significant. Daniel leaving the house, 30 minutes later than his usual departure time. He walked to his car, backed out of the driveway, and drove away. He stopped for coffee. He merged onto the highway. He arrived at his office and walked in like it was a normal morning, greeting co-workers, settling into his desk, doing what people do when they show up to work on a Tuesday. At 8:56 a.m., Daniel's phone buzzed. Text messages from Kristil. Except Kristil hadn't sent them. Daniel had scheduled them from her phone before he left. Time to arrive after his departure, designed to create the impression that his wife was still alive and moving around the house long after he was gone. By 9:27 a.m., he was fully settled at the office, and Kristil was alone on the garage floor. Around noon, Daniel sent a few texts to Kristil's phone. No response. He tried calling. Nothing. And then he picked up the phone and called the non-emergency police line. He told the dispatcher he didn't think it was an emergency, but that something felt off. His wife wasn't responding to his messages. They had been dealing with a stalker, he explained. Threats had been made. He was worried. He also called Kristil's mother. That call sent her directly into the worst moment of her life. At 12:28 p.m., an officer arrived at the Krug residence. The house looked quiet from the street. Nothing obviously wrong. He was about to clear the call when something made him take one more look. He pulled his patrol car closer to the garage. Through the window he saw her. Kristil was on the floor, a severe head wound, motionless, blood smeared across the wall behind her. He called it in immediately and began CPR, working on her without stopping until he could get the garage door open for medics. And in the few seconds that door rose, Kristil's mother, who had rushed over after Daniel's call, caught a glimpse inside. Just long enough to see an officer bent over her daughter. Just long enough for her world to end. When medics took over, they discovered what the head wound had obscured. A stab wound directly above her heart. At 12:43 p.m., Kristil Krug was pronounced dead. Her loaded firearm was found right beside her. She had carried it every day for months. She never had the chance to reach for it. Daniel arrived at the scene not long after officers had secured the area, and from the moment he stepped out of his car, he gave everyone exactly what they expected from a grieving husband. He was shaking, distraught, barely holding himself together. He broke down when he saw the garage. He had to be held up by the people around him, but Detective Martinez was watching closely. And what he noticed, quietly, without saying a word, was that Daniel was crying without producing a single tear. It was a small thing, easy to explain away. Grief affects people differently. But Martinez filed it away and kept watching. That evening, investigators brought the family to the police station for formal interviews. What they heard over the next several hours gave them far more questions than answers. Kristil's brother, Lars, was measured and calm. He acknowledged that the marriage had problems, but pushed back hard on any suggestion that Daniel could be involved. To Lars, that kind of thinking was a reach too far. Daniel just wasn't capable of something like this. Kristil's sister-in-law, Kate, told a different story. She said something about the stalking had never sat right with her. The behavior attributed to Anthony, the hypersexual messages, the obsessive threats. It didn't match the person she remembered hearing about. She couldn't put her finger on exactly what felt wrong, but the feeling had been there for weeks. And then there was Kristil's mother, Linda. She didn't hedge. She didn't soften it. She told detectives plainly that she had a feeling she couldn't shake, that Daniel might somehow be behind what was happening. She had no proof, just a mother's instinct that had been quietly screaming at her for months. Daniel's own interview added to the growing unease. He talked about the marriage being in a difficult place. He admitted they had been going through a rough patch. He mentioned, unprompted, that Kristil had at one point looked him in the eye and asked him directly if he was the one sending the messages. He said he told her no, but the fact that she had asked at all meant that even Kristil, even the woman living inside the fear every day, had wondered if the threat was sleeping next to her. When the detective gently pushed on certain details, Daniel bristled. He wasn't explosive about it. He was controlled. But the shift in his energy was noticeable. A man who had been performing grief suddenly performing something closer to irritation. Meanwhile, at the school, investigators had pulled Kristil's eldest daughter to tell her what had happened. What she shared before they could even break the news stopped them cold. She told them the stalker had been posting on websites trying to recruit other people to help carry out his plan. And more than that, he had been actively framing Kristil as a willing participant, making it look like their own mother was conspiring with him to have Daniel killed. Let that sink in for a moment. Whoever was behind this hadn't just terrorized Kristil. He had spent months quietly poisoning her children's perception of her, turning them into unwitting pieces of his cover story, making their mother look dangerous to the very people she was trying to protect. It was a level of premeditation that went far beyond a crime of passion. This had been engineered. Investigators tracked down Anthony Holland in Utah. He appeared confused when officers arrived, disoriented, with no idea why law enforcement was at his door. He gave his timeline for the day and claimed he hadn't left the state. Officers began the process of verifying every detail of his alibi. While that verification was underway, Martinez went digging into Daniel's past. And what he found changed the entire shape of the investigation. A closed stalking complaint, filed years earlier. The victim was a woman named Carrie, a former girlfriend of Daniel's. When detectives sat down with her, she described something that made the hair stand up on the back of their necks. After she and Daniel broke up, she began receiving messages from people she didn't know. A roommate named Tom, a cadet named Nick. Multiple identities, all of them designed to keep her engaged, to manipulate her emotions, to isolate and control her. None of those people were real. Every single one of them was Daniel. The complaint had gone nowhere at the time. The messages had been sent from a public library, and there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. But the pattern was unmistakable. The fake identities, the manipulation, the obsessive need to control a woman who was trying to leave. Daniel Krug had done this before. He just never got caught.
Her life was hell these last months and last year. Her husband and her were not on good terms. He was in complete denial. She'd tell me how he was.
Did she ever give you insight on what kind of led her to feel like her marriage was over, or?
Dan is explosive, but I've never seen him, hurt her. He would hurt the kids, but, some people think the corporal punishment is...
That we had already spoken with Anthony, and there's no way that he was in town today. I have nothing. I'm terrified to bring my children home. What are you terrified of? If it wasn't him, who was it?
If you were watching these facts unfold in front of you in a movie, what would you say happened?
There has to be someone. I have two different voices going through my head right now. I have my brother Matthew. Yeah, I've mentioned him. He's the sheriff's lieutenant. And I have his voice saying, talk to the police. And typical cop fashion, he married a prosecutor. So I have Lynn's voice in my head going, get a fucking lawyer. I want you to find who did this. Because I know it's... You don't believe that? Fine. Just don't stop looking elsewhere. Focus on me. Okay? I'm the f***er who did this. Are you married? You have kids? Divorced? Right behind you. I don't care if you capture him. I just want the f***er to pay. He took my children's mother for Christmas. They're never going to get over that.
The first piece came in quietly, almost bureaucratically, a response to one of the digital warrants Martinez had been waiting on, and what it contained stopped investigators in their tracks. The Gmail account used to send threatening messages to Kristil, the burner phone number tied to months of harassment. Both of them had been created using IP addresses that traced back to a single location, Daniel's workplace, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, a password-protected network that wasn't open to the public, a network that required you to be an employee to access. Martinez brought Daniel back in for a second interview and put it on the table. Daniel looked thrown. He shifted in his seat, recalibrated, and told investigators it didn't make sense. That Anthony must have been near the building, that someone could have used the public Wi-Fi. He had an explanation ready, the way a man who's rehearsed this moment always has an explanation ready. But the explanation had holes in it, and everyone in that room knew it. Then the results from Utah came back. Anthony Holland's alibi held. Surveillance footage confirmed he was in Utah at the time of Kristil's murder. There were no travel records placing him in Colorado. No license plate pings on any route between Utah and Broomfield. No evidence of any kind that he had been anywhere near that garage. Anthony Holland was exactly what he appeared to be. a confused man in another state who had no idea his name had been weaponized against someone he once cared about, which meant the stalker had never existed. And then the rest of the digital evidence arrived, and it didn't trickle in. It poured. The burner phones, the prepaid devices used to send every threatening message, every vulgar email, every carefully timed piece of psychological terror that Kristil had documented in her spreadsheet for months. Investigators traced the purchase of those phones to a Visa gift card, a gift card registered under Daniel Krug's name. Then the cell tower records. Every time those burner phones had been active, every time a message was sent, every time a threat was delivered, the tower data showed those devices in the exact same location as Daniel's personal phone. Not occasionally, every single time. For months, Daniel had been walking around with two phones in his pocket. One was his, one was Anthony, and then came the search history. From the night before the murder, from Daniel's own devices. How hard would you have to hit someone in the head to make them unconscious? When is a head injury a cause for concern? How long can you be unconscious without brain damage? He had searched for all of it the night before he killed her. Sitting in the same house as his wife and children, running through the mechanics of what he was about to do. There was no Anthony Holland the stalker. There had never been an obsessed ex-boyfriend. There was no mysterious figure watching from a distance. Every threatening message, every fake identity, every moment of terror that Kristil had lived through for months. All of it had come from the man she shared a bed with, the man she had built a family with, the man who stood at her funeral and let people hold him while he grieved a death he had planned in a spreadsheet of his own. He had played every role. The stalker, the concerned husband calling police about his wife's safety, the devastated widower who couldn't protect her. Every performance executed without a single crack, until the data made it impossible to keep the curtain up. On December 16th, 2023, 2 days after Kristil's body was found, an arrest warrant was issued for Daniel Krug. Officers located him that evening. He was on his way to his daughter's dance performance. The man who had spent months constructing what he believed was the perfect crime was taken into custody in a parking lot, on his way to watch his child dance.
Defendant guilty of murder in the first degree.
A jury returned a guilty verdict in the trial of a Broomfield man accused of killing his wife. Daniel Krug is found guilty of first-degree murder, stalking, and criminal impersonation.
Today, the court sentenced Mr. Krug to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It's a just and appropriate sentence for a horrific crime.
Daniel Krug pleaded not guilty. His defense leaned hard on the absence of physical evidence directly placing him at the crime scene. No fingerprints, no DNA, no witness who saw him in that garage. Their argument was that the prosecution's case was built entirely on circumstantial evidence, digital data, timelines, and inferences, and that none of it was enough to convict a man of murder. The prosecution saw it differently. They told the jury this was never a complicated story once you stripped away the layers Daniel had spent months building. This was about a man losing control. Kristil wanted out of the marriage, and Daniel could not accept that. Everything that followed, the fake stalker, the burner phones, the manufactured fear, the months of psychological terror, was the work of a man trying to control a woman who had already decided to leave him. And when he realized the walls were closing in, he made a choice. Carrie took the stand and told her story. The fake identities, the manipulation, the obsessive behavior after their breakup decades earlier. A pattern so similar to what Kristil had experienced that it didn't need much explanation. The jury could see it for themselves. After more than 2 weeks of testimony, the case went to deliberations. The jury took nearly 2 days. On April 17th, 2025, they came back. Guilty of murder in the first degree. Guilty of stalking. Guilty of criminal impersonation. Judge Priscilla Lowe sentenced Danielle Krug to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 9.5 years to be served consecutively. Daniel maintains his innocence. He says he will appeal. His 3 children, now 17, 13, and 11 years old, are being raised by Kristil's family, the people who loved her, the people she was trying to protect. When the verdict came in, Kristil's family had one question that a guilty verdict alone couldn't answer. Not just who did this, they already knew that, but whether it could have been stopped, whether Kristil could still be alive if one thing had gone differently. The answer, according to law enforcement, prosecutors, and everyone who has examined this case closely, is yes. Here is the detail that the family could not let go of. When Detective Martinez sent those warrants to Google and the mobile providers, requesting the digital data that would have identified Daniel as the stalker, those companies received them and did nothing urgent with them. They processed them the way they processed everything else. First in, first out. Routine paperwork in a queue. The typical response time for those kinds of requests was around 6 weeks. 6 weeks. While Kristil slept with a gun beside her bed. While she ran escape drills with her children. While she documented every threat in a spreadsheet and wondered if today was the day the stalker would show up at her door. The data that proved Daniel was behind every message. The IP addresses, the account information, the digital fingerprints he left everywhere, all of it was sitting inside those companies' servers while Kristil was still alive, and it didn't arrive until after she was gone. Kristil's cousin Rebecca, a former domestic violence prosecutor, made a decision after the trial. She was going to do something with that fact. She had no background in lobbying. She had no political infrastructure behind her. What she had was the truth about what had happened to her cousin and the conviction that it should never happen to anyone else. She went to Oregon. She sat with legislators. She made the case. And on May 1st, 2025, Oregon became the first state in the country to pass Kristil's law, requiring communications companies to respond to warrants within 5 days and social media companies within 72 hours, specifically in cases involving stalking and domestic violence. The law passed unanimously. Every vote, bipartisan. Not a single person in that chamber voted against it. The family is now pushing for the same legislation in Colorado, in other states, and at the federal level. They are not done. They have made that clear. Kristil's mother, Linda, said something that has stayed with everyone who heard it. She said Kristil would be proud of the fact that something good could come from something this devastating, that her death didn't have to be just another statistic, that it could mean something for families who will never know her name, but will be safer because she existed. So let's end there. Not with the crime, not with the verdict. With her. Kristil Krug was a dancer and a biochemical engineer who saw no contradiction between those two things. She was a mother who loved her children so fiercely that even in the middle of her own nightmare, her first instinct was to protect them. She kept a spreadsheet. She took firearm classes. She went to the police. She hired a private investigator. She did every single thing that a person is supposed to do when they feel their life is in danger. She did everything right. The system failed her, but her name is now a law. And that law will save lives she never got to meet.